Technology and Learning.
Bruce McIntyre, Director of Facilities.
Bjarke Sears, Principal, Salisbury Community School.
Mike Dudek, Co-Principal at Mums.
Emily Listine, Director of Communications and Engagement.
Matt Parenti, Director of Finance and Operations.
Heather Robb, Principal at Cornwall.
Stephen McKinney, Assistant Principal at Mary Hogan.
Tracy Harrington, Principal at Ripton and Director of Special Ed for Rural Elementary.
Laura Nugent, Director of Special Ed.
Matthew?
Who are you?
I work in Bridgeport as principal.
Okay.
All right. So as you all know, I've started the meeting in my role as superintendent before the board elects the chair. That is our first order of business tonight is the election of board chair. Do I hear nominations? I'm going to open the floor now for nominations. Do I hear nominations for board chair? Okay. Nominations do not require a second.
I'd like to nominate Mary Heather Noble.
Okay, Mary Heather Noble. Do I hear other nominations? Chair.
I'd like to say something, please. Comments? There are comments, correct?
There will be, yeah. The first I'm getting the nomination.
I know it, well, I didn't think they were done yet. Where they were.
Any other nominations? Okay, so nominations are now closed. Now a motion to discuss the candidates. So we have two candidates, Mark Wilson and Mary Heather Noble. Chip?
I've been on school boards for 21 years, both in the UD3 and the ACSD. And this is the first time in my memory that we've ever come to a place where we have a competition for chair of the board. The chair is a really important position on any school board, but certainly on one of this size, which takes into consideration all the schools that we manage. That position itself is extremely demanding. Having done it years and years ago, although in a different time, I can relate to that. Certainly the time spent by the chair in functioning as the face and the spokesperson for the board is important and time-consuming. The chair has to relate to the and relate with the superintendent on a very frequent basis on multitudes of issues, sometimes many more than others, but it is very time-consuming and difficult. Many times the chair that boards have chosen over time have been the best, not always, but they have stepped up to the job when no one else would do it. I'm really profoundly concerned because at this point in time in our school board, in our community, Save Our Schools LLC has mounted efforts to both recruit, select, fund, and elect candidates, which they have done, which they have the right to do. But those candidates that they have come with have an agenda, and that has not always been the case when we've looked for both school board members as a community or as a member of the board trying to recruit people to run who wish to function as a school board member. It disturbs me, and I guess I'm not surprised that at this point we have a competition between basically two perfectly good members of our school board, but they are coming from different places somewhat by how they either were recruited, elected, or supported. So as we make that decision, board, I would hope you would take all that into consideration.
Yes, Brian.
I think when you hear the word agenda, you may be thinking in terms of something that could be poor for a situation or political. One of the things that is not explained by the board member who just spoke with you is what that agenda was that these people were thinking about when they won and elected. I doubt seriously whether any board member here does not have an agenda. Think about it.
Good evening, everyone. At first, I'd just like to thank and welcome everyone here, all the new members and returning members. And I really look forward to working with each and every one of you. Next, I'd like to kind of just address my qualifications at board, and I would love to clear something up a little bit. I never was recruited by SOS. I actually got involved way back in 2020 because I was working and advocating for families in Shore, and so that they would have a voice. And after that, decided I would run, because they needed someone to fill that position. And in fact, in 2020, I actually did analysis work and advocated for a 4-school model. So I, by no stretch of the means, have basically said that we have to keep all our schools open. What I have said, on the other hand, is that I want to make sure that the decisions that we make them very carefully, and that we make sure that we are looking at all of the ramifications when we make those decisions. And if in fact that means that we need to close the school, after we've considered all of that, that's fine. We make that hard decision. We need to keep at the forefront the outcomes and the children, and all of us ground ourselves in what does this mean for the kids that we are supporting and responsible for. So just now stepping back and kind of looking at me as far as qualifications to run, I just thought I needed to clear that up, sorry. I basically spent 35 years in a corporation, 20 of which I managed a team of 20 plus, people at any times, maybe even up to 35 at times. And, my role as a manager was to really help bring out the best of everyone that was there working for me and with me. And it was wonderful to be able to coach folks and really help to see us as a team become the best that we can. I've since done a lot of study in Robert's Rules of Order. I actually have taken some classes recently. The town of Shoreham has asked me to be the moderator, which I successfully did on Monday night last week. If you look back at the Vermont School Board Association's essential work of school boards, and you look at what the role of the chair is, the role of the chair is to really ensure that every single person that's on the board has a voice and is heard, and that we basically then work together to come up with common ground that we can all participate and make the best decision, because it's hard. What we have in front of us is really a hard work to be done. And the other thing that the chair is responsible for is really ensuring that the board sets annual goals for themselves. We build good agendas by collaborating with administration and the rest of the board, running effective meetings again so that we are all able to feel comfortable expressing our ideas. if you look at us, not one of us has the life experience that we all have collectively, right? And so in my view, it takes every one of us to really be able to share our life experience, our contacts we have in the community, to be able to then make the best decisions that we can, on behalf of our students and our community. We also need to ensure that there's follow-up. We're working closely with the community and really advocating for the public education for the district. So, and acting as a liaison between the board and the community. I believe I'm a systems thinker, which means I not only, that's kind of that math major in me, I don't just look at one part of the problem. I actually look at how that manifests and how that one part fits into the system as a whole. So just like we, in our superintendent search, we are looking for a superintendent that's a systems thinker. We too, as board members, I believe, have to be systems thinkers as well. I recently took some training courses with the Vermont School Board Association, which I do frequently, and I came across like 2 awesome classes to the point where I actually bought the books. The first one is Governance Core, and this book is just awesome. It really answered so many questions that I've had over the last couple of years and struggled with personally as a board member. And I would love to help us move more in this direction where we have a common moral imperative and we work collectively to find that common ground so that we can make those best decisions based on that common moral imperative, which is centered around the children that we serve. There's another book that's been instrumental, another course I took, another webinar, Improving School Board Effectiveness, and the real takeaway of this one that has really given me a really high sense of urgency is it's proven that as board members, the amount of time we spend focused on outcomes of our kids directly impacts those outcomes. So if we're not focused, our outcomes go down. If we're focused, our outcomes can go high. And effective school boards are actually, embracing that, and they're seeing that, yes, all kids can learn, all kids can do this, and so that is just like a thrill for me. That we slowly, obviously, start to embrace and move in that direction, because I think it's going to be the best, for our community, the best for our children, and at the same token, I think I am concerned that I don't want to be responsible for our outcomes to go down. And so, like in my career, let's go for the gusto, guys. Let's do the best that we can do, and with the resources that we have, and make sure we're spending them to obviously we have to look at. I'm very conservative when it comes to fiscal matters, but we need to be making those decisions really carefully and make sure that in the end we really are saving money and it is really benefiting our children to the best that we are able to. Thank you.
I'll say something. First of all, I just want to welcome you board members and thank you all, and thank you to everyone who ran. I was looking in the paper the other day and saw that I believe it's Mount Abe's district has 4 vacancies. 4 vacancies after the election. And I just remember kind of looking at it and thinking, oh my God, we had had a lot of people step up to the plate in our learning community, and I just feel really lucky that we have a community that has folks who care as much as they do about our students and our education and our schools, and so I just feel really grateful for that, that we are here and our seats are full. And yeah, we have a big task in front of us, but I'm just really grateful for the interest that everyone has shown. So thank you for being here and welcome. I don't have a big long spiel to say. I guess I would just say that I accept the nomination. I would be honored to serve as board chair. I have served as the chair of the Communications and Engagement Committee for the past 2 years. That is a very active committee that meets frequently and has a lot of output. So I have been led, and taken notes for a lot of meetings over these past couple of years. And so I feel like just look at the minutes on our website, and that shows my dedication to this district as a whole. So I share a lot of the same feelings that Barb does about, you know, having, this is a moral imperative to come together and work for our educators and our kids. That's why I'm here, and would love to serve the role. So thank you.
All right. Well, I think we are actually Joe.
Yes, I'm losing my voice, so I don't know, hopefully you can hear me. So this is just regarding the chair position. I'm so grateful we have two very strong candidates. I think Barb and Mary Heather would both put, you know, as much time and energy as you could possibly hope for and more into the position. They're both people who have volunteered and subbed in our schools and seen things firsthand, and been active on the committees and participated a lot. So I've been like really thinking about this and going into this meeting sort of knowing, you know, that we probably have two people. It's different than in past years. And I think it's like weigh the pluses and minuses. I think they would both do well, but lead the board in a different way. I like how Mary Heather's a parent, and you're so polished and you're so excellent. I think you've gone above and beyond with all of the things that you've done, and I'd love to see you continue as the clerk. But it's also not fair to put you in a box just because you're so good at what you do. Because you would probably do just as well with anything that you put your mind to. And I really love Barb's ideas about trying to take the board function and how we interact with each other to a different level. So this is just a really hard decision to make. I don't think that we can go wrong either way. One that, you know, I don't like how things have become almost like one perspective versus another. I think in the end we all have the same common goal, and so one of my thought processes is like, which person could possibly take us away from that, you know, thinking from two camps way of doing things and really working together. And you know, Barb has stated that she has some, you know, she's been researching this and wanting to take the board in another direction as far as how we relate to each other. And if Mary Heather knew that's what we wanted to do, she would probably do that as well. Who knows? It's just, I'm just grateful that we have such wonderful leaders in our district. I didn't realize there were 4 unfilled seats. You know, that's really startling. So I think this is a hard decision, especially for the new board members who haven't really, unless you've watched a lot of the recorded or read the minutes, you know, it'd be hard to really make a decision. But I don't think you can go wrong either way, is my perspective anyways. A lot of people I respect. It's funny, I've come out of the woodwork and been like, oh, I think this person would be good, I think this person would be good, and I agree with them all. It's like, you know, what are we gonna do? But my hope is that whoever becomes the chair can take us forward in a unified way, you know, and really focus on the students. And maybe try to explore some new ways of relating to each other to have a more effective board. We're pretty effective, but we could be more effective. So I guess that's all I have to say. Just thoughts.
Despite saying that she was not recruited, Board Member Wilson does support Save Our Schools. She has contributed hundreds of dollars to candidates supported by Save Our Schools, and is often involved in strategy sessions with them. And so to say that there is an agenda, unfortunately, it is often hidden in the case of Save Our Schools, and the more you dig, the more you find out about it. I think that Ms. Wilson's appointment would be very divisive and would suppress much more conversation and ideas than it would bring to light. So I would support Mary Heather Noble because I believe that she would be much more fair and much more interested in the function of the board and not do things like organize meetings with teachers at a school without notifying anyone, and only bringing along those board members who agree with her agenda, which is something that Ms. Wilson has done. So I think that to quote what the Vermont School Boards Association says to do is a little bit ironic, considering that that is specifically against their code of conduct. I would like to vote for someone who would follow the rules all the time, not just when they're convenient. So that's my 2 cents.
I totally agree with Lindsay that we are lucky to have 2 great people that have shown commitment over. I've been on the board for 1 year and both of them have shown so much commitment. And I really would hope that we could speak positively about maybe the board chair candidate that we felt would be able to lead us into the future rather than disparage the other one. I don't think that that's a proper way to discuss this right now. And time again, Barb has brought us back to the data, wanting the data, needing something to work off of. And I really appreciated that because we can get lost in the ether with these ideas and philosophies. But if we have the data to back up some of the decisions, it will make sure that we can mitigate unintended consequences. We can make sure that each child is accounted for and seen. And I just really appreciate time and time again, she reorients the conversation towards that. And I don't think that I don't think that's political or binary. I think that's just straight wanting to do the best thing for the district.
I'll basically second that. I've learned a lot on this board over the last year from both Mary Heather and Barb. I personally do not know how Mary Heather takes notes while speaking. And it is a skill that as a writer I've tried to get and I basically do not have. Somehow she does. And I've appreciated the way the Communication Engagement Committee has been transformed. You know, a lot of that I know Mary Heather because of the leadership there you've taken. I've learned a lot from Barb as well. In this context, Barb and I are also on another board together, which I've learned, and she basically plays a similar role in both places. And that is, as Joanna said, to really try to keep on insisting that there is data behind the decisions we make. And I really much appreciate that sort of data-driven approach. I feel that so I feel compelled to support you, Barb, based on that. And I think that that kind of approach benefits all of us, not just the board, but in the district. So thank you both for, throwing your hat in the ring. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a perspective as a newer board member. That when I was appointed to the board, Barb pretty immediately reached out to me. To your point, Steve, about sort of having conversations. And we got coffee and Barb asked me what my reasons for being on the board were. Some might call that an agenda. But she said, what are your reasons? And then I asked her what her reasons for being on the board were. And that was one of the few conversations I had with anyone where they asked me what I thought about things or what I was open to or what I didn't understand. And it was really helpful to me. And I thought that was a really great sign of leadership, that she was willing to engage in that conversation. And I don't know if other folks who ran for the board had a similar experience, but that really struck me. And the other thing that struck me in that conversation that I think is a really important sign of leadership is the enthusiasm that she talked about board culture and board functioning, and she just did again. And that's entirely on her own, and seeking to find ways that we can all work together. It's a big group of people, like you said, Chip. We have big problems, big challenges to face, and I think someone who recognizes that in a leadership position, she has the ability to set the tone, but also to bring people into that process. Again, in my experience of working with lots of different leaders across the country, that's a pretty special quality that someone can bring to a group like us. So I also support you, Barb.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we are voting on our two candidates. We will vote in the order in which candidates were nominated. So Barb, you were nominated first, so we'll start with you. All those in favor of Barb Wilson as chair, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and all those opposed? All those abstaining? Okay, I counted 7. So the mantle goes to you.
Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Barb Wilson is now chair.
Oh my goodness. So now we need to get on to the business at hand, and what we need to do at this point is to elect the additional slate of officers. So the next position that we need to elect is vice chair, and so I open it up for nominations. Okay, Chip?
Nominate Suzanne Fuck.
Okay. Any other nominations? Lindsay, I'm sorry. Joanne. Joanne. I thought maybe you would say Lindsay.
Yeah, I have my hand up as well, so you go first.
I nominate Jamie McCollum.
Any other nominations?
Can I now nominate someone?
Well, you can accept it or not.
Yeah,
If you don't have to take it.
Okay, for now, I'll accept it.
I would like to nominate Mary Heather Newell.
What did you say?
Mary Heather Noble. I'd like to nominate her.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You were waking up.
I know, I said I'm on a cell phone or something, but I'm here.
So far.
So far, we have 3. We have Suzanne, Mary Heather, and Jamie. Any other nominations?
Yeah, I would nominate Lindsay Hesnut.
Okay, and we have Lindsay. So would you accept, will each one of you accept the nomination?
I sort of defer a little bit here on this. I'm not convinced I would be the best person for it. I was actually going to nominate Lindsay, personally.
So are you withdrawing?
So I'll withdraw. No.
Lindsay going to accept the
She already
nomination?
did.
Yes, I'll accept that nomination.
Great. So any other nominations? Any technical?
Can I ask a question as to how we're going to vote on this, Chair?
The way we'll vote is we'll one by one, and we'll do like Peter did, the first person, the second person, and then the
Okay,
third
all
person.
right, thank you.
Does that make sense?
I may, just
Okay.
asking.
Okay, are we ready to do the comments? Do folks want to make,
I would just like clarification on who was nominated, because I got a little lost.
Yes. Why, me too. The first nomination was made with Suzanne, who's right there. The next nomination was Mary Heather. And then we have Lindsay.
Thank you.
And so no more, right? Do I close the nominations? Okay. And so now I'll open it up for folks to make comments if they would like, on behalf of the candidates themselves. Go ahead, Jim.
I'll just say, the reason I withdrew and I was excited that I was going to nominate Lindsay, just because Lindsay, I think you've spoken up at times when it was not always easy to speak up. And over the past year, I've seen that happen a number of times, and I've wanted to do it, and sometimes, honestly, kind of chickened out. And I have a lot of respect for your ability to do that, and I think that having you in a little bit more of a leadership role in that sense would be really important.
Anyone else?
I would like to say something about her knowledge of procedure and policy and her experience both leading boards and serving as a vice chair would be invaluable in that position. And so I think that she has the most experience and she certainly has the most credentials to be able to serve in that capacity.
Who is that? Steve, I just missed the name. Is it
Suzanne.
Suzanne, okay.
Sure.
I would say the same thing. Suzanne's been on boards for multiple years. She recently served as the vice chair of the board. So the executive committee, which is not a formal committee, but it's made up of the 3 officers, sets the agenda along with the superintendent, and she's been actively involved in that. And at this point, she's chair of the board of the Hannaford Career Center. And she's on that board because we appointed her to be on that board. I think she should continue as she has been a very successful and effective vice chair.
Any other? Go ahead.
I would just say that I really admire, Lindsay, the way that you bring such a full view, I think, to our discussions from my experience, and not just from across many different places or different ages, but also kind of the whole life of a child and the whole life of a family. And I think that's such a crucially important conversation, talking about after school and in-service days and sort of how we as a board consider, just holistically what is happening among the people of our district. And I really admire that, and I admire the way that you come in so heartfelt to these discussions and you listen to everyone, and I see how actively you're listening. So I think, like Jamie said, that leadership would be really wonderful on the board.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Lindsay.
Is it normal to have somebody nominated who's nominated someone? But I just want to see Mary Heather in a leadership role on this board because you're fantastic. And so that's why I nominated you. I just really, I want to be able to use all of your wonderful talents to the benefit of the students in our district. So, and then Suzanne, I've learned so very much from you. I'm thrilled that you're on the board. And I would never choose to go against you guys. I don't want to go against you guys. I have a very different way of operating. You are so knowledgeable. It's just unbelievable how much, you know about the history of the board. So it's an honor to even be considered in the same line as the 2 of you. So I thank you for, I appreciate that I was even nominated. It's an honor. So I could have also nominated Suzanne if Chip hadn't, because you've done a really flawless job in my perspective in trying to listen to very different views, I guess flawless is a terrible bar to set, but in the meetings when I was in the policy committee with you, you brought a very, you keep so many different things in mind, but and I guess in a different way than I do, you know. So I'm just honored to be able to work together with you on this board. So, yeah, I almost hesitate to accept the nomination because, like, who really would be the best person for the job, you know? So you guys have more time to devote to it, but I do try to consider myself not impartial, but my agenda isn't like one consistent thing. It's just what I hope is best for the kids, but you guys are probably right there with me, so. Thanks.
Anyone else? So then we'll get on with the voting. So all those in favor of Suzanne for vice chair, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. All those in favor of Mary Heather, please raise your hand. Oh, do we have to do opposed? Okay.
And can you vote for each one, or you only vote for one person?
Yeah, each one is a yes or no, and
Or an abstention.
or an abstention.
But you can only put one.
We should probably think of them as everyone's against, we make a choice of one.
That's why it must be better if we all three at once and
That's
take the ballot.
That's what I was asking.
Which
the
we want to
question.
do a paper ballot?
That might be cleaner.
I think it's cleaner.
Might be cleaner.
I agree.
Yeah.
So why don't we
Paper,
do,
I have some paper.
let's do a paper ballot, and what you will be doing is just writing your choice for the position, which would either be Suzanne, Mary Heather, or Lindsay.
Well, I mean, I know people's coming this way.
Okay.
So we are putting our yes on the ballot.
You're going to write the name.
Whoever you want.
Got one?
Right, so, yes, right, I'm with the ballot.
Do you need a ballot?
One name on this paper, one you want, not our.
We'll let the Susan tell me. I'll come back.
Should we give this to them?
Thank you.
Yeah, Suzanne.
Oh.
There's
Not those ones.
And Linda is going to do the honors.
13.
I have one.
Okay, so the votes have been counted, and Lindsay, you won by one vote.
Okay.
So congratulations.
Thank you, I think.
And thanks to everyone else. Okay, so I'm going to try to move a little quicker here. We have the Ripton kids waiting to give us presentation. So the next position is clerk. So if we could make nominations for clerk. Yes, Jason.
I'd like to nominate Mary Heather Miller.
Excellent. Anybody else?
I'll second.
Any other nominations? And so I think the appropriate thing here is to do, we'll vote to confirm it, right? So those all in favor of Mary Heather being our clerk, raise, show your hand to say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you, Mary Heather. You did too good of a job, so it's going to be hard to get out of this job. Okay, we need to appoint a truancy officer. And would you do me a favor and describe the role of it so we all can, I probably
It's an official contact in our organization with the county, state's attorney, and other legal representatives who work through the truancy process. Our truancy officer is Officer Souza, our school resource officer. So I recommend appointing him as our truancy officer.
I move that we appoint Officer Souza as our truant officer.
I second.
Any other nominations? No, that's it? Okay, great. So all those in favor, and what's, I'm sorry, what the name again?
Officer Souza, Connor Souza.
Connor?
Yep.
Souza?
Souza, I can.
Okay. All those in favor of nominating Connor Souza as our truancy officer, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay. And the next appointment that we need to do is the Hannaford Career Center representative, and I believe we have two here, correct? Or
You have one appointment.
We have one that is would like to return, which is Steve Boydrick. And Tricia Allen would like to be in my place. I have been moved to a permanent 3-year position on the Career Center Board as their chair.
And so, are you nominating?
Yes.
Okay. So, any other nominations? Okay. So we can vote on that. So all those in favor of accepting the nomination and having Steve and also Tricia represent us on the Hannaford Career Center, say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Congratulations. Awesome. So what we're going to do right at this moment is we're going to juggle the schedule a little bit, the agenda, because we have the Ripton School presentation on tap, and the kids are patiently hanging out, and this way they can do their presentation and go home. They're not patiently. So I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you. I think that will be very appreciated.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm not feeling well. I need to leave.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Hope you're okay.
Thank you, and thanks for pushing this up a little bit on your agenda. What we have for you is a little sneak peek at a production that the students are putting on under the direction of Tara Gallner, who's a parent. It's a short Alice in Wonderland production, and it's going to be the 25th and 26th. So you're their very first audience. It's a little bit of a walkthrough. Unpolished, but thank you for watching and being their audience. Do you want to say anything, Tim?
Right now, I need cinnamon and I need the flowers. Okay? So flowers, take your seat right here. Okay,
Should we face this way or this way?
So we're in the round.
I haven't learned that yet. Remember your spot? Your second name. You shall do the thing.
Alex, you take your spot. Leo, come take your spot. Come take your spot. Okay. Remember, you guys are frozen flowers. Alice is waking up from falling down the rabbit hole.
Oh dear. Pardon me, but did you? Oh, that's nonsense. Flowers can't talk.
But of course we can talk, my dear.
And you sing too. How curious. Ready? You can learn a lot of things from the flowers. For especially in the month of June, there's a wealth of happiness and romance, all in the golden afternoon. Let's see if I've got it. You can learn a lot of things from the flowers, for especially in the month of June, there's a wealth of happiness and romance, all in the golden afternoon.
Well done. Come along, dear.
This is our second Alice.
Where am I? Oh dear, I must have fallen in the rabbit hole. How do I get out?
If you chase after strange rabbits, you'll discover strange things will happen.
Who is that? Is that you, Mr. Rabbit?
No way, no how.
Then who are you? Show yourself.
Who are you?
I came here by mistake. Can you show me where I am?
I can show you a great deal, but first we must have a proper introduction.
I am Alice.
And I am the Cheshire.
First the talking rabbit, then the singing flowers, and now the talking cat.
It would be very wise of you to be more polite.
I am very polite. I've just never met talking animals before.
This is the first time for everything.
Suppose you're right. I wonder where that is.
There's lots of things to wonder about Wonderland.
Wonderland?
That's where I did. Welcome to Wonderland.
Well, if it's all the same to you, I really must be going.
It's not the same to me.
I suppose you're right. But please tell me how to get back home now.
Why are you in such a hurry?
If you must know, today's my birthday and my party begins at 5 o'clock.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time doesn't matter much down here.
Well, it matters a lot to me. Would you please show me how to get back home?
That all depends on where you need to get to.
I want to get home, but I don't know which direction to go.
Well, you can go this way or that way.
The White Rabbit mentioned the Queen of Hearts. Maybe I'll ask her. She sounds very kind-hearted.
Why would you think that?
Because of her name, of course, Queen of Hearts.
Well, you'd be thinking wrong.
Mr. Cat!
Call me Jessie.
Jessie, I would like to get home, but I don't know where to go.
Why did you say so? I'm happy to help you.
I guess you're not as unfriendly at all. Thank you, Jessie. I guess you're not that unfriendly at all.
I'm a cat. I don't have friends with just anybody.
Well, I could be really good a friend right now.
And friends we shall be.
Why do you smile all the time? It's something funny.
Everything's funny if you're willing to laugh at it.
Off their head. Who's that?
Don't ask to turn it on. party scene.
Alright, ready? A very merry birthday to me. To who? To me! Oh, you! A very merry birthday to you. To who? To you! To me? Yes! No room! No room! There's plenty of room, but first, may I ask which way the Queen of Hearts croquet game? No, you may not ask. Well, then, that's a lemonade! But I don't see any lemonade. That's because there is none! It wasn't very polite of you to offer it. It wasn't very polite of you to sit down without being invited. I didn't know it was your table. It's laid out for a great many more than 3. Your hand is coming. You shouldn't make personal remarks. It's very rude. Why did you wave him like a writing desk? Oh, a riddle. I believe I can guess that. Do you mean you think you find out the answer to it? Yes. Then you should say what you mean. I do. At least I mean what I say. That's the same thing. Not the same thing a bit. Why? You might just as well say that I see what I eat is the same as I eat what I see. You might as well just say I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like.
You might as well just say that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe.
It is. What day of the month is it? The 4th. Today's wrong. What a funny watch. It tells the day of the month but doesn't tell what time it is. Why should it? Does your watch tell what year it is? No, but that's because it stays the same year for such a long time. Have you guessed the riddle yet? Oh, no. I give up. Wait, no, that's wrong. I think.
I haven't the slightest idea.
Oh, I haven't the slightest idea. Nor I. Nor I. Then it wasn't. I think you might do something better with the time you're wasting than asking riddles that have no answers. If you knew time as well as I do, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. Dormouse is asleep again. No. Wait, sorry.
I'm not twinkle.
I'm not. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder where you're at. Up above the world you fly, like a teacher in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle.
Off the head! Oh! My knees are shaking. Sorry, Queen. Hello, Your Majesty. Who are you and how did you get here? My name is Alice and I came here by mistake. Come to the croquet ground. That's an order. Thank you, but I'd really just like to go home. Nobody goes anywhere until I give permission. Everyone to the croquet ground.
That's it.
Thank you. That was, there's some talent there. Of course. Yes, awesome. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is open it up to public comment. If there's anyone here in the audience.
I'll
do that next, yeah. Okay. Stand.
I'm Kurt Broderson. I'm here in my professional capacity tonight, not as a parent. I'm the Executive Director of Middlebury Community Television, for those who don't know me. I want to publicly thank Eddie Fallis and Nargis Anzali the 2 student representatives to the school board. They interviewed all of the candidates who could make it on MCTV, and we've gotten great feedback, and I just wanted to say a great shout out to the 2 of them, so thank you, thank you. And second thing is the ACSD board appoints one of our board members. It has been Barb in the past, and I think that's been a year now. Now with Barb as chair, she may not be able to fill that role, so the board collectively will appoint someone. It does not have to be a school board member. In the past, Tim O'Leary, who was here when he was the technology coordinator, technology integration specialist, ACSD appointed him to our board. Now that ACSD has a communications committee and staff member, that might be an appropriate place, but I can come back and talk more about that when the board does committee assignments. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. State your name, please.
I'm Avery Thompson. I am a 6th grader at MUMS. I am here to inform you that today is the first day of Neurodiversity Week. This is important to me because like 15 to 20% of the population, I am dyslexic. And dyslexia is just one type of neurodiversity. Some other types are ADHD and autism. I am here to, I would like to thank my teachers and my counselor for helping me to get some activities in this week for dyslexia, neurodiversity activities in this week. But I hope we can do more. I am trying to start a club called Kind Club, Knowledge, Inclusion, Neurodiversity. I hope that the board will do all it can to help students like me. If any of the board would like to speak to me about what it is like to be a neurodivergent student in the district, I am happy to talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone online? Okay, great. So getting back to our agenda, before we get into the kind of the meat of the meeting, the next thing I'd like to do is establish our regular board meeting date and time. In the past, since I've been on the board, we've been doing it the 2nd and the 4th Monday of the month. And previously, it was a little later than it is now. Now it's at 5:30. So I'd like to open it up to discussion to see how this time works. Does it work, or would it be better to have it later, a different time? Yes, Chip.
I'd like to make a motion that we meet 2nd and 4th Mondays at 5:30.
At 5:30?
So as a comment, currently
Let's second it first, and then
I'll
we'll talk.
second it. That's what.
Okay, go ahead,
Yeah.
Tricia.
Sorry. As far as Mondays, it's actually the only day I'm at the library until it closes at 6 p.m. So I could do Mondays later than 6 or a different day earlier than 6, but Mondays at 5:30 would make it difficult for me to attend.
I would also just say it's hard to feed kids and get out the door if you work until 5 and then have to be somewhere at 5:30. So pushing a little later would be great for me.
Would it make a, would it make a difference if we at one point had met the 1st and 3rd Monday? Would that make any difference to anyone?
I can't make the 1st. My husband's on the fire department.
Oh, that's why we changed it before, was because of Peter.
Go ahead, Chip.
Just a comment, Barb. You know, the 5:30 was moved recently, only because we got complaints from folks because the meetings at times went till 10. And generally our meetings are, I think, reasonably efficient, but there's times they go a long way. I understand the difficulties always finding the perfect time, but, I think leaving it on a Monday, part of that is also the selectmen meeting in Burlington is on Tuesday night, so I think the TV guys are there, which conflicts a little bit, and that's part of the reason we've been on Mondays, but timing.
So one option that we have at this point, procedurally, Chip has made a motion that's been, the motion has been seconded. If someone would like, they can make a motion to amend, to change the time. And then we can, agree upon that and then vote on the original motion with that change, if in fact it passes. So go ahead, Mary.
I'll make a motion to amend Chip's motion to meet every second and fourth Monday at 6:30.
I would second that.
Okay. And any discussion on that change? Are we ready for the question? Which means, are we ready to vote? And if so, all those in favor of the motion that we would continue to meet on the second and the fourth Monday at 6:30, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it, so our meetings will be the second and the fourth Monday, starting at 6:30. Thank you.
We can have coffee ready.
Yeah, we'll have, yeah. We're going to be efficient. Okay, the next item is a recommendation to approve the minutes of February 28th, March 1st, and March 2nd. So we have 3 sets of minutes. Let's take those one at a time. Do I have a motion for February 28th?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of the 28th for the special and the annual.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, corrections? Hearing no comments, then are we ready for the vote? All those in favor of approving the February 28, 2023 minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say nay. Abstentions? Okay, great. We have a couple abstentions because people weren't here. So those are approved. Do I have a motion for March 1st?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for March 1st.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of approving March 1st minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Thank you. The March 1st are approved. And March 2nd.
Just
Abstentions.
abstentions.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
And all those in favor of approving the March 2nd? I'm sorry. Is there a motion for the March 2nd?
I'll make a motion to approve the March 2nd.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the March 2nd minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say no. Abstentions? So those are approved. And thank you so much, Mary Heather. Next on the agenda is approving the ACSD bills. I'll turn it over to Chip.
For those who are coming onto the board, we review the bills every 2 weeks pretty much. The bills come out and by, I don't know whether it's written or where it is, that 2 members of the board have to sign off on those bills. And then the person, the clerk that manages them, the treasurer comes in and signs the checks. Generally, this is a pretty regular type of a thing. It varies time to time. It's much easier just for me to do it every week or every 2 weeks than trying to figure out to recruit people to do it at a certain time, because it's usually got to be done in 1 or 2 days. So that's when chair figures out the assignments. Usually it's somebody from the finance committee or people from the finance committee. It doesn't have to be, but consistency is helpful. You can do them online pretty much too, unless you want to look at every little bill. But there's like, I don't know, 18 pages sometimes, so there's a lot.
Only 8 pages. It wasn't too bad.
It wasn't too bad. Yeah. So I will report, first off, it's from bills left over from the previous session of the board, or whatever it is, that were read on the 27th of February. The first, and Barb and I read those both. The first is for the regular general account of $373,380.49. And there's a payroll warrant of $888,677.14. And another payroll, or actually an extra, I don't know what this is actually. It's part of the Golden Fund, I'm sorry, which is for $401.99. That's the first group. Second group were read today, 13th, and it's the general account of $849,750.84. Included in that, because it's a much larger number than usual, is quite a bit of health payments, VHI, which makes up almost $430,000. I just did it very grossly, thousand of that. And there's also a $100,000 charge, $106,000 charge in there for a new vehicle for, I guess it's special ed, yeah. So a lot of that money, of that $800,000, is made up of two big issues. The second of this week's is a payroll. Again, sometimes these are a little fractionated than the smaller ones, of $187.88. I like those kind. One for $714.62. And then the last payroll warrant is for $831,737.23. Seeing no problems with the bills, Barb and I make a motion that we pay them.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Thanks for that explanation about the bills, Chip. That's helpful context about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, we've argued in the past, just comment, Chair, if I can make it, as to whether we wouldn't do these types of things. I think it's still helpful, honestly. You don't find, it's not that we're looking for problems, but in a $42 million budget, there's a lot of things. Sometimes there are 4 pages of nothing but food service, $50, $30, $20. So I wouldn't want to have to compute all those, but obviously that's not the fun part. But the other part is just, I think, having some perspective of where this money goes at times. And any of us can take part in this. I don't have tips on doing it, but I just think it's important.
You actually do.
It has been easier, honestly, since with COVID we could do it online and just have to sign it and scan it to draw this. But I'd be happy to talk with anyone. Once you set up the appointments or the committees, then we can figure out how we do this efficiently. And all Barbara and I have sort of been on the same track with it, to make it very easy over the last year. So
yeah, and I, have chosen most of the time, not 100% of the time, to go to the central office to actually review them. And it's really, kind of just scanning through and, seeing the school bus that was purchased, so then you have a little bit of an explanation. And sometimes it's really interesting because, I saw, some ACP expense that we hadn't really talked about as a board. So I was able to bring that back, and we had some great discussions about the ACP program. But from my perspective, it was really eye-opening, really to see all of, the different breakdown of expenses that's part of the school, district. And, everything from special needs busing and all that kind of stuff, it really gives you a much better appreciation for the complexity of, the budget. It's, so it is a good experience, I find, and you get to say hi to the staff, which is always fun too. Melissa's great. So it's been, we made a motion to accept the bills, and a second was made. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay, the bills are approved. Thank you. Next up on our agenda is the report of the superintendent. So I'm going to hand it back to Peter.
Great, thank you. So I also wanted to welcome the board members and let you know I'll be working with the executive committee and with Barb as we kind of work to onboard and go through orientation. We have all sorts of stuff to share with you related to the central office and how things work and operate. So I know Heather has reached out to all of you, and probably want to include you, Ellen, too, just because you never got the full experience. So let's do that for sure. I did want to also mention Linda Barrett, our ACSD clerk, is in the back there. She is incredible. And she is also here to swear in any new board members if you have not already done so. So you can do that. You're going to be here afterwards.
Okay.
Or now.
Rather do it now, wouldn't it?
We can do it. Do we want to just
Only one left, right?
I have Jason's. Oh. So I don't know if there's anyone that hasn't done it already.
I did mine at the town clerk around 4:40 this afternoon.
I just received it.
I haven't done mine, but I have to go to the town clerk in Salisbury tomorrow anyway, so I could do it there at that time.
You could, or you could do it.
It's pretty short.
It is. I'd be happy to do it now.
Yeah. So why don't we go ahead and have an official swearing in?
So our clerk can leave.
Yes. Because she's got to be out of school bright and early tomorrow. So. Linda.
Do I need to do it again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We're just elected. I will give you one. Yeah, absolutely.
Suzanne.
So I'll swear after her. I will swear after her.
That's fair.
I also just wanted to, a quick shout out to all of our principals who are here tonight. They do an amazing job. They constantly make me a better person and a better leader. And I want to thank you all for being here and for doing everything that you do every day, every night, every weekend, every time. Thank you. So for new board members, another thing, just there was an attachment in the agenda with the board report. So that is an important document. It outlines a lot of the things that are happening in the district at the school level and at the central office level. So you'll see things that kind of work, different projects we're working on, initiatives that are happening. And it's a good way to kind of stay connected to what's happening. And that's something that comes out at the first meeting every month. So you'll see that attached once a month to our board agenda. Hiring update. So we do have our MUHS principal hiring, which is happening now. We have our Ripton principal hiring, and Michaela is beginning the process for the mom's assistant principal. So we have three pretty big hirings going on, along with mine right now. And we will, in terms of timeline, our principal search is a number of weeks away, 2 weeks away to conclusion. Our Ripton principal search is, I believe, concluding this week. And the assistant principal position, probably 3 weeks or so. So that's just kind of like a rough outline of where we are in those three. I will be bringing candidates back here to the board for kind of a final stamp of approval, and look forward to doing that. I also wanted to just mention, in terms of our budget and the budget vote, just how, Chip mentioned earlier about, or no, Mary Heather did, about the board positions being hard to fill in some places. And I think it's just, everywhere you look in our district, I think you see people stepping forward and standing up and supporting education and supporting community. And I think it's, I mentioned this 10 years ago when I first came here and went through the interview process, and was just in awe about how, just the feeling of this community and of our larger community. And I think that's reflected in a 4-to-1 budget that's being passed. The impact in terms of taxes wasn't huge, but the increase was 8%. And our community understood. I think they're also paying attention, so they understood. They kind of tracked throughout our different presentations to learn more about what's happening and what the students' needs were, and supported us. And so I just want to thank, for anyone who is listening, thank you for supporting us and supporting the kids in ACSD. It's huge and it's everything. The big presentation tonight is on special education. We wanted to give the board and the new board a little bit of a deep dive into special ed. I know we've talked about some of the work that we've been doing, really kind of consistent, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years. And Nicole's going to kind of take us through that a little bit, and then focus on kind of where we are now, looking ahead with Act 173. The board members are going to hear all sorts of different acronyms and numbers, and eventually they'll make sense now. Hopefully you'll know more in an hour than you will now, or half hour. So we wanted to, as I said, just as we look ahead to next year and we think about some of the kind of the big rocks that we're moving with special education and general education, and how we're working really kind of together as opposed to these things being isolated. This really is, as we look at the strategic plan for equity and what the outcomes of that are going to be, this work is key, it's critical. Our leaders for the last 2 years at our retreats have been focused squarely and centrally on this. This Access, Success, and Belonging came out a year and a half ago at our initial retreat, when we came together and really realized together as a leadership team, we have to focus on general ed and special ed and the confluence of those two things and build one system. And we have been on that path, we're on that journey, and there's lots more to do. And Nicole, floor is yours. And I have a clicker if you need one. Awesome.
Hi, everybody. Before I even start, I want to say that I'm doing the talking, but this is really the work of Caitlin and Tracy and Laura and Michaela and Jen and Heather and Andy and Bjarki and Matt, every leader and Mike in the room. And so they may interject at some point, or they may have something to offer, which will be fabulous, but this is really everyone's work. The first thing to note, when you get a copy of this, in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a hyperlink to the presentation that Caitlin and I did almost exactly a year ago, which was our first one on this topic. Okay, here we go.
Are lights good, or do you want lights dim?
I think lights are good. The more the question is, why isn't the clicker clicking?
You might need to be closer.
Oh. This happened last time.
You'll be sitting in the chair.
Or your battery with it.
It doesn't even move with my finger.
Let me help.
I think the battery's okay.
Well, you just flipped it too smart.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, we're all right. Here we go. Okay. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is building a multi-tiered system of support. So this is the work just for this year, right? So I was trying to get everything into a slideshow, which is a lot. So here we go. This year, we've had work area number 1, which is in strengthening our Tier 1 universal systems. So I've listed here sort of the big things we've done so far this year that we're still working on. Continuing with our coordinated core curriculum, continuing to design for and implement UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, at Tier 1, thanks to Joy and Pam and Eileen and Brandy and Heather. Universal screeners, so these are screeners that we use across the entire district. All students K to 5 have FAST. I can't tell you what FAST stands for. 6th through 9th is STAR testing, and then K through 12th is Panorama. So FAST and STAR is academic, Panorama is SEL. And then finally, I think it might be this year, that we started a district-wide data analysis where all the leaders come together and they look at all this data and we talk about what's going on and we look for patterns. So that's work area number 1. Work area number 2 has been building our Tier 2 system. So this year we've had a very large group of leaders come together, leaders, interventionists, basically anyone who does any kind of intervention anywhere in the district, for RTI, which is Response to Intervention Design and Implementation. We've worked on comprehensive data collection for EST and 504s for the first time ever, so we'll hopefully have a whole data set for next year. Very exciting. District and school PSTs. PSTs stand for problem solving teams, so doing what teachers have been doing since forever, coming together as groups of people to talk about what's working and what's not and why. Working on aligning our EST process across the entire district. Wow. And then finally, interventionists have been coming together. They come together about once a month to identify best practices and share with each other what's working in their schools. Work area number 3 has been understanding Tier 3 rule changes, which is special education rule changes. And that is really the fabulous work of Laura. You got a capital NU. Laura and Tracy, pardon my typo, were hired because they have the technical expertise to bring special education staff together and really take a deep dive into understanding the new rules and getting coordinated and aligned across the district, because there is so much change that's happening with special education. Strengthening Tier 1, building Tier 2, and understanding what's happening with Tier 3. That's the work this year. I'm gonna keep going. So then we come to the money, special education funding. So work area number 4 has been understanding special education funding. Shout out to Matt, who has sat in countless meetings with me and read countless emails as we've worked out what this all means. So Matt, if I got it wrong, this is the time to correct me. So 2016 to 18 is when the funding recommendations were made. 2022, we got our first census block grant. We got $60,000 more than we had during the reimbursement model. This year, 2023-24, it keeps growing. Our budget coming up will have an additional $400,000 from the state for our block grant. So we've gone from 60 to 400. And then in 2027, we will get the full block grant implementation, which is ready for acronyms, the UBA times the LTM. Uniform base amount, which in Vermont is $2,350, times the long-term membership, which is the average 3-year enrollment. I'm gonna keep going. So this is what it looks like with like raw data. All the way on the left is 2018. We got about $2 million in reimbursement. 2020, we got a little bit more than $2 million. 2023, we got our first census block grant. If you remember, we got $60,000 more than we had the year before. Fiscal year 2024, again, that's $400,000. That one on the far right is an assumption. If our enrollment holds, that is how much more money we will get in 2027. This is what it looks like compared to our neighbors. On the left is Addison Central, 2023, 2024, 2027. This is just for the block grant. Addison Northwest is in the middle. Mount Abe is in the right, on the right.
Do we have an idea why we're higher?
Why we're higher? I think for a long time ACSD spent less.
Yes.
And the new formula corrects.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it's based on number of students, so it makes sense. If you look at the enrollment, right, across the 3 districts, you know, we're about twice the size of Addison Northwest. And Mount Abe is, I mean, it tracks pretty much perfectly to enrollment.
Yeah, it's about 200 more, we have about 200 more students than Mount Abe.
And so like the average per student is probably about the same. Is that true? Or are we still a little higher?
The average per student, meaning per special education student, per all students? I didn't do those numbers.
That's fine. Yeah.
So, oh yeah, Jamie.
Sorry, so I guess that's, so it looks like we're getting more money. That's great. But are we getting just more because we have more students enrolled, or there's no other reason? Like we're getting more, we're not getting more per student.
It's the everybody in the entire state gets, we just found this out.
Right.
$2,350 per student, so per long-term enrollment, long-term membership. So our long-term membership right now is $1,741.
Okay.
So if that number holds,
Right. Okay.
this is what it'll look like in 2027.
Okay.
1741 is all students.
Yes, all students in the district. So here's where it gets just a slightly complicated. I tried to keep the same colors. Blue is census block grant, right? Think of it as like a suitcase of money that the state hands us based on our long-term membership. Red is the grant we get from the federal government. It's about $500,000 plus or minus 50 grand. It's a formula grant. Yellow is our local funding, meaning the funding that we as a district have said this is how much we're going to spend. So taken together, no pun intended, that's the whole pie.
You might get to it. All right.
Okay. So here's what it looks like, the whole pie as a graph, or as a stacked chart for fiscal year 27. If enrollment, again, right, this is me saying if nothing changes, 4 million block grant, 500,000 federal grant, 2,300,000 local funding, which brings us to a grand total of about $6.8 million. This is what it looks like fiscal year 27 compared to this year. Our budget for, or not this year, for next year, our budget next year is $5.6 million for special education. Fiscal year 27, it'll be about $6.8 million.
Nicole, you said if our enrollment holds steady, does that mean that they recalculate every year? It's not on a 3-year cycle?
Yeah.
Okay. So every year that number could change depending on enrollment?
Yes.
Okay.
But the ADM, it's an average of 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so,
Got it.
so
Okay.
even if you go up or down, it really slows the impact. It slows the change.
Keep going. Okay. Let's see what's next. I can't remember. So then I was thinking, might be helpful to know, how are we spending the money? So this is for fiscal year 23 and 24. On the left is special education, direct service providers, and related service providers. So these are just the staff members who implement special education. They may also work with other students, but they are primarily hired for special education. In the middle is the number of funded positions we have. On the right, if it's yellow, those are the openings, if you know anyone, both for this year and next year. So you can see special educators have sort of held steady at 30. I think they were 30 when I, maybe 27 when I actually came on a year ago. Psychologists is the hardest for us to staff. If we can't staff a psychologist, we're going to add a member to the special education evaluation team so that it's a little bit more robust. SLPs, since, who's been here much longer than I have? Since however long. How long has it been since we've only had 5? Feels like forever. We only have 5. We've never really gotten above 5. And then paraeducators is 41. That's just special education paraeducators, though it's not classroom paraeducators. Okay, so if that's the funding, let's look at the data. This is just the data for this year. The system to collect data in a way that is robust has just sort of begun in the past year. So you're not going to see a lot of historical data. I've got data for this year. So here we go for initial special education evaluations. So on the far left, there have been 55 requests for an evaluation. That means for a student who's never been on an IEP before. So that's 100%. To the right of that is what percentage we've approved to have a meeting, and it's 96%. So of the 55, 53 of those requests went to a meeting. In that meeting, they had a conversation, which is the next column, about whether or not to have an evaluation. 95% have been referred for an evaluation, and then the farthest right, of those 95% who were referred, 81% have been eligible. My understanding from the eval team is this is historically large. They keep saying this is where this number would have been where we were for an entire year, not where we would be in February. That's consistent across the entire country. We're not an outlier.
Nicole, are all of these percentages from the block before meeting, is that in the third column, is that 95% of the 96% that
Yeah.
came? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So this is what it looks like by grade for initial evaluations. The colors are for schools. I decided to not let you know what schools it's associated with because some schools the number is so small that it would be identifiable. So at the top is the total. And then you can see coming down, 5th grade, 3rd grade, and a little bit 10th grade. Well, 10th is kind of tied to 7th and 6th right now for initial evaluations.
What's the, can you just
tell us the different colors?
They're different schools.
Okay.
I don't want to tell you what they mean. I mean, I'd like to, but I think it would cause some kids to be identified. And this is since August, so this is right just to now. And then take this. I don't know how to get rid of that little your screen sharing thing.
Jamie, can you drag it down?
It's in my way. Because it's interesting to see the federal government keeps amazing statistics. I lost my power. Oh, there's my power. So this is the federal data. The most recent federal data is 2020-21. The most recent Vermont data is 2015. So I went with the federal data. Whoa.
We'll go small. We don't know where.
So this is, I decided to just show you New England. It felt most relevant. So there we are at the bottom in the red circle, right? As the middle column is a percent of public school enrollment, about 18.4% of students in Vermont are identified as being eligible for an IEP. It's gone up 11.2%. curious numbers above that. It's gone down 22% in Rhode Island. There's lots of curious things in this one little chart. But I just wanted you to look at Vermont. And then here we are in comparison to within our county, our region. The blue on the left, bear with me, this is my attempt to try to make a narrative. That's 100% because that's us at 1747. Addison Northwest is 52% as large, as Peter was saying, and Mount Airy is 82% as large. The red is the percentage of their students. So 15% of our 1747, 15% of our students are identified as eligible. Addison Northwest 16, Mount Airy 15. That's a curious question too. Why is it so steady across our county?
So the 16% is in relation to our 100%?
Yeah, the 16% of the 52%. So if Addison North, this is representing how big Addison Northwest enrollment is compared to ours.
Yep.
And then this is the percentage of students in Addison Northwest who are identified with a disability and have an IEP. I wanted to give you an idea of how the percentage of identified students compares to the total enrollment. Yeah.
So I'm slow with this. So that means that a lot more people in Addison Northwest who are eligible have an IEP or have.
You mean total number?
Total number.
I don't have a calculator on me. 16% of.
It's visually confusing because they're the same size. They're percentages on the red, and it's like whole numbers in blue. So you kind of have to take each on its own, I think. But it's,
Red is a percent, the blue is a number.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So Nicole,
Yeah, but what?
Well, I'm just wondering, is it correct to say then that the percentage of students who are identified as needing special education in ACSD, in Addison Northwest, in Mount Airy, are all 15 to 16%?
Yep.
Okay.
That's
But the numbers for us. would be
Right,
higher.
yeah, okay.
Because we have a larger
Right.
N. Yeah,
Okay.
our N is 1747.
Right.
So we're not necessarily identifying less or more
Right.
than our surrounding districts.
which was a question the board had for you a while ago as to whether that was the case. I think you asked me.
Yeah, that's why I'm so confused about
And
it. Okay.
that's-
But yeah, thank you for,
That's an important.
yeah.
So if you did 15% of 1747, 16% of 989, and 15% of 14 something, that would be your total number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you speak to why Addison County was below the state average?
I could guess, but it would just be an educated guess. I think our poverty rate and therefore the impact of childhood trauma is significantly less. Special education tends to track pretty closely to poverty rate and compared to the rest of the, and Laura Nugent has an answer too.
So my time in Chittenden County indicates that Burlington's about 20%, 18 to 20%, Winooski is about the same. I think the population of poverty population in that area and also the New American population, which is not necessarily equal to kids with disabilities, but they're actually under-identified to be fair. But I think that these populations impact the percentage in that area, and we just don't have those populations here as much.
I believe Rutland City is 25%. So here we are with grades, and of our 15%, how it breaks down in grade levels. So our fifth graders right now is the largest percentage of students identified as living with a disability and needing an IEP, followed closely by our ninth graders. Our kindergartners, the smallest number.
This is consistent between third, fourth, sixth, I mean, not 6, 7, it's almost like identical, isn't it? for those other grades.
For middle school.
Mary Heather?
Well, I'm just looking at it and just wondering how this tracks with the timing of certain sort of testing milestones and how that, is an indicator for,
Yep.
we need to look at this,
Yep.
here.
Can you relate this graph to the other color by grade, the one that was sort of asked for an evaluation, right? Yeah, and can you talk a little bit about where we would want to see most of that identification happening?
Oh, yeah. The third grade is pretty high, and if you go back, that's where that block of consistently higher.
You want your
So, but
students
this is-
identified
but this is
as early on
different.
as possible.
Well, that's what I.
You don't want to be identified in high school.
But these are representative, these colors represent students currently on an IEP.
Yep, versus this
This is just an asking for an eval.
Mm-hmm.
So would we want to try and target an early evaluation? I mean, 10th grade seems like kind of long in the continuum of learning to be asking for an eval.
That is a conversation the eval team often has. What's going on?
Well, you'll also find with students, and I can speak from experience, that students are on an IEP when they're in a younger grade, and then they come off of it based on not meeting the 15 percentile. Then where they sometimes will crash and burn is when they go from 8th grade to 9th grade, because the academic rigor has increased so much that just breaks them. So that would be one of the reasons why you'll see those 9th grade numbers up there.
You can talk. I'm sorry.
You
don't have to apologize.
One of the other things I was thinking too is that new people moving into the district impact that. So the upper grades may be impacted, since there aren't really big numbers, by people coming from other states, which requires an initial evaluation.
And so here we have in blue the percentage distribution. There are 13 disability categories under federal regulations. I think this is 10 or 11 of them. Blue is ACSD this year, percentage distribution. Orange is nationally in 2021.
So in this case, in several categories, ACSD is higher.
Yes, double for more than double for developmental delay, a little bit higher for SLD.
Do you have any thought why that might be, or?
So for emotional disturbance, I can speak to, because that's one that I know very well. The entire state of Vermont is about double or triple the national. It's unclear why. There's a tendency in Vermont you have a choice between identifying a student as, gosh, I don't want to use these words. This is federal law, not Nicole. Socially maladjusted or emotional disturbance. Social maladjustment doesn't give you access to IEP services. Emotional disturbance does. There is a tendency in Vermont to go with what's going to get you the services. I'm trying to think, what else could I speak to?
Does your developmental delay data include the pre-K?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it includes pre-K.
Does it include triple EEI?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you define the acronym you just used?
Early essential education, early essential intervention, and those are for 3 and 4-year-olds.
This might be the last slide, I can't remember. No, it's not. Okay, moving away from data. This is more, I know there are some people coming onto the board which this might be their first time dipping into special education, so I just wanted to, these are 4 or 5 big picture things to understand. They're far more complicated than they're here. Happy to talk at more length about them. Number 1, special education requires a strict process and a flexible instructional mindset. So it requires 2 things that can feel juxtaposed. from the get-go. Special education's technical. We're monitored for annual compliance, and often we have to show 100% as the only accepted target with the federal government. Laura Nugent has done a fabulous job of helping us with that. Secondly, is we have to remember that no two students have the same instructional needs, and IEP teams require support from a host of people. They have evaluators, administrators, interventionists, teachers, and families, all to develop goals. So you're never going to find two IEPs that are exactly the same, because there's no two teams that are exactly the same. And it's really important to remember the IEP team is the decision maker, no one else. Second, special education regulations are designed to ensure both access and progress in the least restrictive environment. This means that school districts have to be able to demonstrate evidence for the level of restriction. So then what does this mean? We have to have school data and school experts weigh in on the needs of a student. And we have to always consider that courts can hold us responsible for both doing too much and too little. So you can be held responsible for doing either. And that's a really delicate balance. Thirdly, special education is an entitlement. Parents have the right to disagree with school decisions and ask for a mediator or due process hearing officer to step in. It's a legal entitlement. This means that special education can include disagreement between schools and parents. It happens. It's not a bad thing, it's a thing. And it means that school districts have to understand what has been allowed elsewhere. We have to know what courts are saying and why. And we need employees to follow highly technical processes based on what's been allowed or not elsewhere. It is a highly specialized technical field within education. This might be the last one. Here's my social justice moment. Ready? Nobody seems to know this. Special education is a partially funded mandate with a fully implemented regulations. IDEA was designed to be funded at 40%. It's recently hovering at 15%.
So what does that really mean?
That means the federal government in 1975, when they put the law into place, they said, we're going to pony up 40% of what you're going to need to support kids. They're currently ponying up 15%.
First we'll require it by law, then we'll help pay for it. But
Yeah.
they forgot the second part.
Exactly, that's what. Yep. So, what this means is, we do consider costs, right? Like, that part of the work is considering costs, but really it just means that we can select the less expensive option. It doesn't mean that if a kid needs something and it costs a lot of money, we can just say no. It means if it costs a lot of money, is there anything that's the same and costs a little less? And if there's not, it is what it is. And then secondly, to help us be flexible with needs as they arise, what we do in ACSD is we centralize all the financial resources so that then we can distribute it according to IEP services. So the resources aren't tied to schools. So it doesn't matter where you go to school in the district. What matters is what you need, and then we can fund it based on that need. Questions?
So the census block grant is a movement away from the reimbursement. The reimbursement in my head had go-between with the state and the district, like communication, right? You would say like, this is what we're billing for and this is what we need. Can you talk about the shift in that dynamic with the state, like the reporting to the state? Is it, just how has that changed?
That's a good question. So what's changed is we get a suitcase of money.
At the beginning of the year?
Yes. Like we know now, Matt and I were told you're going to get $400,000 more next year. So we can plan for that. If a special education staff member is working with, if 95% of their time is spent only with special education, there's almost no paperwork. So the administrative burden's been lifted, which was the intent, but only if most of your day is spent in special ed, more than most of your day, 95% of your day. And we have to document that. Teachers have to like certify that. What else has changed? You no longer, none of us any longer have to say, we can't do that because that kid's not on an IEP.
What does that really mean? So give me an example.
What does that really mean? Special educator has a group of 3 students, and we have a 4th student who would benefit from a similar level of intervention, but isn't on an IEP. Or we can write an IEP and we can put the person who has the best OG skills working with the child rather than somebody who might be a special educator but isn't trained in OG. It's a little more flexibility. But is there anything?
You did it right. Although the model with the percentages of more kids with IEPs versus not with IEPs is somewhat of a Medicaid reimbursement model as well, which still is a thing, right? But that's how the feds look at it too, or I shouldn't say the feds, that's how the state reimburses it. The federal government's different. So the state reimburses it, used to reimburse it based on that model, but that's no longer the case, which is something to be celebrated because now the most qualified person can work with the child.
I think Barb actually technically calls on you. Jason.
Jason. Your presentation, I will.
Sorry, oh, okay.
It's okay.
You were also able to get reimbursed for exceptional expenses, is that correct?
Yeah.
And so is that something that we do, or?
Yeah, that still exists. Yeah, we get 95% of whatever costs above 65,000 now? 65, yeah. Used to be 60. So it's not the whole 65, right? We still pay that 65. Let's say a student's placement costs 75, we'll get 95% of that 10 grand.
The presentation you referenced in the beginning, I think was the first one I saw on the board when you talked about 173. And there seemed to be a lot of anxiety and trepidation about it coming. And so like overall in the last year, have you changed your opinion of it? Or has it changed? Like you said at one point, a couple months ago, you said something like, it's not as bad as we thought. And so then I never heard what was good about it. And so.
Yeah, so Matt, Peter, and I went to a January meeting with the AOE, which was their big reveal for the uniform base amount. Up until then, it had been a secret. And so we didn't know how much money, right? And so that's when things shifted for us, because it was like, oh.
More instead of less.
We like this. We like that.
Oh, really? You like
Yeah,
okay.
so that was a big turning point.
Is that like, do we expect that more to continue?
As long as our enrollment, we have to keep our enrollment up.
And then it plateaus in
2020.
7.
Yeah, but it plateaus at a much higher rate than it is now.
Yeah, we're stepping up and then.
But it's also, anytime you're getting sort of the block grant type of thing for a certain number, there's always that suspicion that same thing's going to happen from 1975 and the federal government saying, we're going to cover this whole thing, and now they aren't.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when it's the old unfunded mandate of something, even though it may be perfectly reasonable, it is still a problem. And I mean, I'm suspicious of it happening the same way.
Mm-hmm. I'm really glad you said that, because if I go back to this slide, the thing I didn't say that Mary and I actually talked about in my last board presentation, where we touched on, was this. So a logical person who budgets at home would think, if we're getting more of the blue, we don't have to do as much of the yellow, right? We don't have to do as much local spending. But the federal government has something called maintenance of effort, which is once you've spent a certain amount of money on special education, you can't really ever spend less unless over a long period of time, you can show that fewer kids are eligible. So it's not, we can't reduce our yellow even though our block grant's bigger. And there's a tendency to think if we're getting more money, we wouldn't have to spend, we could spend less, but we can't.
So at the state level, now that we have this new block grant, do they have effectiveness kind of evaluation of how well we're utilizing the money that they're giving us? Or they pretty much are trusting that we've done the best that we can do, kind of thing? Is there like requirements for proving that I spent the money properly? It's probably a better way to say it.
So there are 17 indicators, it's called OSEP indicators of appropriate special education programs that we are measured by. One of the things that Nicole mentioned earlier with 100%, in some cases required targets. And those are ways that they measure. It would not be fair to say that they measure very fine detail. It's not very granular, but it's overall. So the number of kids with IEPs who graduate within 4 years or 5 years, the number of kids with IEPs that whose IEP is completed at a certain amount of the right amount of time, evaluations are done in the right amount of time, that kind of thing.
Nicole, in the 2 bar graphs you showed us, the one where there was the initial funding of what our district was receiving compared to Addison Northwest and Mount Abe, it seems like we were receiving around the same, but now with the move in the block grant, we'll be receiving a lot more, which would reflect our different enrollment numbers, and knowing that we have more kids by number who qualify for special education. I guess my question is, is it too early to ask what you all are thinking about doing with these additional resources? It feels like it's leveling up to our needs, which is great. So I'm just eager to hear, or maybe in a future presentation, what the more will look like for our kids.
It's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fabulous question. Right now, it's just being incredibly grateful because there's so many kids who are eligible right now, and yeah. But we will keep you posted about that.
Any other questions? Has Act 173 changed the approach to IEP formation? And can you give an example of like how it shifted?
I would say, I actually turned to my colleagues to check my thinking. I would say it's too soon to say, and it is, you could say forcing, you could say helping, you could say cajoling us into building earlier interventions that are more robust, so that students don't have to, for lack of a better term, wait to fail for an IEP.
So the change wouldn't necessarily be reflected in IEP. It would be reflected in universal design and other parts, or no?
You know, if the state were here, I wonder if they would say something to the effect of over time they'd see fewer kids qualifying because their instructional needs have been met at an earlier point.
Although I don't think that was what the advisory, Special Education Advisory Board had in mind. I don't think that reducing the number of kids on IEPs was the goal.
True.
But the goal, I believe, if I want to channel them, is that they wanted to see the most qualified people teaching kids, rather than just because you have a special ed license means you teach everything.
And how do they make sure? Is that just an honor system? Like you know your staff, you know your
This is a great question.
I think it's a checks and balance system. The process of creating IEPs, the evaluation of the IEPs, the due process and mediation program pieces, and independent evaluations that parents can request per evaluation cycle are all a check and balance that help ensure that, or at least that's the intent.
So one of the things I was wondering with one of the graphs, and I don't know if you have figures for this, but I am curious the percentage of which kids who have met the criteria, you know, passed through all the gates to qualify for special education, are they based on the district's evaluation, or is that based on independent evaluation?
Oh, that's a great, I don't have the statistics in my head. There are so few independent evaluations that we get that would be an easy one to figure out.
And then the second question I have is, can you talk a little bit about, I mean, it's sort of following up on Joanna's question about, you know, the idea is to try to provide intervention and you know, catch those kids in tier 1 and in tier 2 before they would require. So can you talk a little bit about how the other aspect of 173, which to my understanding is the expectation that the state has on school districts is that you create a coordinated curriculum, that you have horizontal and vertical integration. And so can you talk a little bit about how that figures into this whole thing? So I guess what I'm driving at is the importance of having a coordinated curriculum.
Do you want to answer that? You look at me.
Yeah.
Oh, don't answer that.
I don't mean because I can't. I just mean because that's your love. I can answer it. So
I'm very happy.
I think.
I got it.
Okay. I was gonna say. I think Caitlin would say.
So a coordinated curriculum is a really important foundation for equity. The idea is that we have our teachers collaborating together within a framework, considering what is the appropriate scope and sequence of learning, both in a single grade level and then vertically throughout, so that there's a standard sort of baseline. And when we bring our teachers together and collaborate around that curriculum, we really are able to maximize our collective efficacy and build on the strengths of one another. So that is what our tier 1 instruction is. It's predominantly at this point, after 7 years of building an IB curriculum together, a coordinated horizontally and vertically aligned curriculum. So it allows a lot of places for personalization and for flexibility. And I know, having spent a lot of time at the high school lately, that we're really interested in how we can increase flexibility also to make sure that we're meeting all students where they are and where they need to be, and where are those tensions between what is common and what is specialized for students' particular pathways. So those are conversations that are actually much more powerful to have when you have a baseline in common to start with. So we understand where is the bar that we have set for everyone, and how do we create another pathway that is equal, even though it's different. Do you want to add anything to that?
I would only add one sentence, which is, I think, and how do we create that tier 1 set of practices that are the most inclusive and the most accessible? So how do we attend to the fact that people learn in different ways and not let how people's learning styles are be something that prevents them from accessing the core curriculum?
I'd like to add one more layer. So we have this sort of fully drafted IB curriculum, and now we're working on sort of 2.0, right? It's all drafted, and we're actively revising and revamping and strengthening it over time. And one of the most powerful ways that we're doing that right now is with our ESSER-funded literacy investments, right? So we have a literacy coordinator who shares an office with and collaborates very closely with our PYP coordinators, and they're digging deeply into what is science of reading based, appropriate phonemic awareness, scope and sequence for early foundational literacy. How do we weave that together with content-rich decodable texts, and then weave those into our units of study so that they align. So when we're studying a science or social studies standards, we're also embedding decodable texts that are accessible to students at their reading level as we build them. And because we have a curriculum that's common across 7 schools, when we do that collaboration, it scales easily. So this opportunity to have a baseline common curriculum then lets us say, okay, where are our gaps? And how do we lean in and address those gaps together? So literacy is a major focus for us now and definitely into next year. And we know that math is another priority. And so I just think that common foundation is really a...
And we're 7 years ahead of everyone else.
Well, I guess that's what I'm wondering is, if we already have these curriculum coordinators, it seems easier to kind of plug those efforts into those existing efforts, as opposed to, and I don't know what other districts are doing. I imagine not many are where we are in terms of our tier 1 work. So it just seems, because we get a lot of questions about the sort of the juxtaposition of IB and special ed needs, right? And I feel like as a board, we should understand, how that works together, and that it is supposed to work together, because obviously the work that you put into tier 1 and the foundation, and the extent to which you can make, consistency across all our schools and from one grade to the next, that is your first step before you even get to this stuff. I guess I'm just wanting to make sure that we're able to answer those questions when they come up.
Well, can I just follow up on this exact question?
Okay.
Like, what is the relationship between special ed and like the diploma program or whatever? Like, is there an obvious way in which, like, maybe this is, I don't know, maybe I should know this, but like, I don't understand how special ed kids who qualify are eligible can fully participate in the IB curriculum. And is that sort of what you were?
Well, no, I guess, I think this is one of the common misperceptions out in our community, is this understanding of what IB is, and that, for example, in the high school, the diploma program is like a small part of IB, and IB is for everyone. The diploma program is a rigorous program that, I would sort of equate to like, kids going through like an AP, a rigorous AP type of situation. But
Right.
students at the high school, even if they're not participating fully in the diploma program, they're still accessing IB because they're participating in classes that are DP, they're taught, they're IB classes. They just might not be fully committed to the 2-year, very rigorous. And I guess, I would imagine it's possible for kids who are in the diploma program to also have IEPs.
Right, I guess that's.
Or 504 plans.
Or 504 plans,
whatever.
Yep.
Does that happen?
I don't know. I've never unveiled that.
So conceptually, it would happen the same way. The intersection would be the same as students who have IEPs and move through any high school program.
Right.
Right, they need special accommodations in order to have equitable access to and success within the Tier 1 instruction. And so that's true in IB courses. I think we have some significant work to do to pull those stats for you in terms of both participation in IB. We were just in a meeting, I'm looking over my shoulder for Emily, with our curriculum leads. I think it was today. Today's Monday, right? It was today.
I have no idea it's Monday.
And just this morning, and we were thinking about, if you just think about the high school, all 9th and 10th graders are in the MYP, the middle years program, and that's a program that's designed for everyone. Some of them are on 504s or IEPs or ESTs with various accommodations and supports in place, but they're all basically accessing that same core curriculum. When you get into 11th and 12th grade, our students have far more choice.
Right.
So they might be at the Career Center or in internships or in early college or in the diploma program courses, and they have 3 different ways that they can access those. They can take a DP class and just take the class. No external assessment, I'm just taking it for Middlebury High School credit, moving on through. So that's option 1. They can take a class and go for that external assessment, which is kind of high stakes because there may or may not be college credit on the line for them.
Right.
But we pick up the cost of that assessment for them as an equity measure for access. So that's the second way. We call that a certificate student. I'm in the class, I'm pursuing the certificate in this content area, I'm not pursuing the whole diploma. Or they can take that really rigorous path and they take the whole array of DP courses, and it is a rigorous path. They take all of those assessments and they're going for the diploma. So there are 3 different access points just to that diploma program, but it's only one of various ways that they could move through our class, through our school, and all the same IEP and 504 supports would apply to the student in any of those scenarios.
I would say though, I think that the concerns that you both are raising they came through pretty loud and clear in those comments we received, right, as a board about the superintendent search, and I'm sure everyone's hearing that in different conversations, and you all are at the front of that too. So I think this is a big conversation about how, there is the perception of conflict and not confluence of these 2 needs, right? Of a curriculum that's universal, and then also meeting the tailored and specialized needs of students. So that's not a question, it's just a statement.
It's a very real tension that you're making, and it's one that we have to work within.
Yeah, but I guess, I'm sorry, Barbara, I guess I just want to follow up with, like, I think it kind of falls on us as board members to help clarify those questions when they come up and not necessarily, I don't know, just, yeah, you're right, there is this conflict, because I'm not sure that's true. I guess is my point.
Yeah, so I think, one of the things I believe being here as a board is do a deep enough dive with your health, right? So that we really understand how to answer questions. Because if we don't know the knowledge, we're not going to be able to say anything. So to your point, exactly. So we have to be knowledgeable and be provided with learning so that we can adequately answer those questions. One of the kinds of, oftentimes what I've heard is that folks feel that if you're not in the AP courses, there's, once you get up into a higher level, like math or science or what have you, there's not many choices. So you really only have, and I don't have any clue about that, right?
Yeah, I would say it's a thing that at the high school we're looking at pretty closely. What are our course offerings and are they the best match to our student population? So one of the things that we wonder about is, are we offering too much diversity within diploma program courses and not enough diversity outside of them? And honestly, it varies by department. So these are questions that we're actively grappling with. Because there are real tensions that you're needing that we haven't solved for yet.
Can I say that, we've really had a great presentation on special ed. We've moved down into IB, and I would really like to have that for a different time. I understand the questions regarding IB and the concerns regarding which can qualify for some special education, but to me, it seems like we've gotten off into the IB substantiation, which I really want to understand better. And I think we need to do that to answer the questions that everybody has said. And I look forward to that because I totally support it and I want to be able to back it up with what I see. But I hear the same things, okay? And some of that is real.
On your point, Barbara, about doing a deep dive, I just want to, I think a few weeks ago you noted that CPAC, this Special Education Parents Advisory Committee, is another really wonderful source of understanding more from the perspective of the parents who work with you all too, so that there are some good partners that we can be using them.
Yeah. Anything else? Good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. And there is more materials that were provided. I know Matthew has some materials in the meeting materials as well. Definitely read those. If you have questions, what would be the best, if they did have questions, say, on other materials that are within the meeting materials that we didn't cover today, what would you recommend is the best option?
Probably reach out to the executive committee to either talk about either some kind of follow-up or a future agenda item, probably.
Okay. Next, report of the board, and we do have an action on our agenda today. So when you see an agenda, you're going to, whenever you see action, that means we're going to do a vote on it, on approval on it. So in this particular case, this was something that was warned, so that the public knows about it. And there were materials within your meeting materials that we'll be talking about. So who would like to lead that?
I will kick it off and just remind people this is money that was set aside previously from an ending fund balance to improve the cafeteria at the high school. We've been talking about this project for quite some time. It's going to be nice to see it done and completed. Bruce is here to take us through this memo. And then we're looking for a motion at the end. And you can see the motion recommendation on the memo included. Bruce?
All right, so page 27 in your board pack. Oh, I'm sorry. Bruce McIntyre, Director of Facilities, and I have spent a fair amount of time working on this project. Thank you for all of your support, past, present, and future. So in your board pack on page 27, there is a memo that presents to you the guaranteed maximum price that Breadloaf has come up with. So the process was, we hired Breadloaf as our construction manager. They take a percentage of the overall project as their fee. All of that was predetermined. Then they have to go out to all of their subs and bid out all of the work based on the scope that we developed. They've done that. They've had multiple bids for each category. And we gave you, as an example, the real rough breakdown of different types of work that are going to be done in this project. And so the total of the work that Breadloaf and their subs are going to do comes to $2,038,599. And that's the guaranteed maximum price. Now, if they realize some savings, that money will come back to us. So if they don't use the contingency, if something goes really well, it could be less. If something catastrophic happens, I guess at some point there's a break point where, when I say catastrophic, if they find out that it's actually $1 million over what they quoted, they'll have to come back to us and we'll have to obviously talk about it. But if it's $50,000 more than what they quoted, Breadloaf is going to eat that. So they've got some skin in the game, and basically that's the reason for going with a construction manager format. It's, we're both responsible for this project coming in on budget. And so I've also included in here a total project cost summary, so you understand that the work that Breadloaf's doing is the physical work, and then we have soft costs associated with that, architectural fees, permitting, and we've broken out some of those soft costs in the next page to show you that the overall project, by the time we're all said and done, comes in around $2.5 million. And that's roughly what we set aside for this project. And we can come in so close to that number because we went out we paid a professional company to estimate what our original scope was. And they came back and said, oh, it's going to cost you $4 million to do this project. So we went through and value engineered a lot of the stuff in the project so we could get down to what we had set aside to do the project. With that said, the kitchen is getting all redone, which is great. We have scaled back on what we were going to do out in the cafeteria. Now, this price does include changing the flooring in the cafeteria, which will help improve the look, and doing some touch-up painting so things look nice when the students return. And so that, let's see, do you have any questions before we go over a motion?
Just in perspective, Bruce, I mean, for those that weren't aware of it, this particular kitchen was made when the school was built in 1954. It's on slab, correct? So all the drainage pipes and other pipes that come in are collapsed or down below or doing what we don't want them to do. When the cafeteria was redone a long time ago, the kitchen was not part of that. And other parts of the redo the high school back in the late 90s, the kitchen was not part of that. So this is a project for the new people and for others that has to happen, both for all the reasons of safety and hygiene and efficiency. But 54 years is a long time. I mean, how many years is that? Almost 70? That's a long time to not redo your kitchen. So
I apologize if I should know this, but I think that the high school, in conjunction with Mary Hogan, do they prepare all of the food for all the schools in the district? Does the high school prepare? No.
No.
Okay, can you explain what, because I know that.
So the high school prepares the food for the high school. Through the pandemic, we did prepare food for the district between the two schools. But now that the pandemic's been done, we're back to preparing food in individual schools. I do think Mary Hogan supplements the food service in the smaller elementary schools, right? So I think.
And Shoreham. So we've had, Mary Hogan has been providing food for some of our schools.
Okay.
When we've had the staff member we needed to hire, or to make it easier to, with smaller scale, they've been able to kind of do a better job cooking it and bringing it. And Waybridge has had that too, so,
Okay.
yeah.
And
But it's
Salisbury?
not all schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a moving target,
I'm
so.
gonna take he's first, then I'll come back to you, Chip. Okay. Right.
Bruce, I think the taxpayers should really appreciate the approach that was used, not the accepting of a $4 million figure, but the process of bringing it down to a realistic amount. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna let Lindsay go because you've had a chance, and
Okay,
then I'll
thank
come
you.
back to you, Chip.
And to continue with what she was asking, we used to have Abby Group, right? And now it's all done in-house, or do we still contract some of our actual fruit services?
No, it's all in-house.
Well, the feedback from my 5th grader is that it's so much better. He loves his school lunches. And so thank you for whoever made that change. That was fabulous.
I eat in the cafeteria, the food is tons better.
Yeah, I want to go there. I want to eat there. And one other question is, you said that you were able to reduce the scope of the program, the total cost, and part of what was eliminated had to do with the cafeteria. Could you please just share some of the more notable things that were taken out of this project?
Yep.
And maybe highlight ones that might come back to us?
Absolutely. So probably one of the very big drivers was the HVAC equipment that serves the cafeteria. It was updated in 1997, but it's at the end of its useful life. So in the original scope, we were going to change out the HVAC that serves the cafeteria, and the kitchen didn't even have any HVAC in it, so it wasn't getting any air exchange at all. So we cut it back, since we already have air handling equipment for the cafeteria that's been maintained. I mean, it's prone to breakdowns, but we can keep fixing it. So that is staying, and that represented like $1 million of the $4 million was to change out all of that HVAC equipment. And so we still have HVAC equipment going in for the kitchen area to do air exchange, but we didn't touch the part that serves the cafeteria. And now, it's just so you're aware, any updates they do now, and engineers are putting in air conditioning into spaces. So given climate change and usage of buildings, just if you go out to, we renovate some of these schools and we have to do a big HVAC renovation, that new equipment will include air conditioning. And so that adds a fair amount of expense. But that's the new standard. And then another big driver was kitchen equipment itself. The kitchen consultant we used had loaded up the kitchen with all the latest and greatest stuff, and so we spent a fair amount of time going through that list and taking out some of the really pricey items. It would have been nice to have a steam injection convection oven, but it was really pricey, so we're not getting that. Now,
still at $363 for the kitchen equipment though, so hopefully
it's still pricey, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't take everything out. Yep. Yeah.
Just as a follow-up with Ryan, when when we allocated this money out of the capital fund, okay, we allocated, I think, 2.5, correct? Is that what it was?
Yep.
So in fact, we were, or in that range. So in fact, that's what we were going to spend. The 4 million came in because of what they said, okay, you're gonna do this project, here it is, and then Bruce has had to go back and figure it out. So, period. 2.5 is what we allocated, that's what we're gonna spend. Maybe even a little less, if things work to our advantage.
Yeah.
But can I just ask one other question, because it came up the other day that, how are you gonna feed kids when this is not in operation?
Good question. So we have spent a little bit of money on fortifying the kitchen space in the concession stand off of the football field. And so April break is when Bread Loaf's going to take over the space in the high school and start cutting out the floor and all the work that they're going to do in the kitchen. We are shifting our kitchen crew out to the concession stand, and they will prepare the high school meals there, and then they'll use, insulated Cambro carts to bring lunch in every day. That section where I like to call it the pizza kiosk, but in the corner of the high school cafeteria, they get the countertop. They'll be serving all of the meals from that location until school's out. And then the plan is to be back into the space fully when school starts. So, and you may have seen, if you looked at the breakdown closely, they put in a line for overtime. They're intending to work Saturdays as well through the summer to try and meet that goal.
Is the contract, is there do they have a requirement that they have to be done by a certain date, or they get a penalty, or they get incentives if they get done
I
early?
believe there is a penalty clause in the AIA contract, so the architectural contract. I don't remember exactly what it is at the moment. Yeah, but there's penalties if they can't meet the deadline. And I think really for them, the savings is going to be that if they're done by the deadline, it saves them money as well. Because this is the construction manager style is more of a joint effort.
Bruce, there's 541,000 in soft costs in there. 180,000 of that is contingency.
Yep.
So what do you expect to come?
If we have to redesign something, because we dig up the floor and find out, hey, we can't do it the way we said we were going to do it, then it needs to go back through engineers, the architect, the state. So.
There's not construction contingency.
Yeah, that's in the soft cost. So there's a contingency in the construction as well, and it's a smaller percentage. And I asked Brother, well, how come the percentage is lower than what I thought it was going to be for contingency? And they said because they felt very confident in the design of the project and what it would take to get it done.
Who are paying the project manager?
So the project manager that we're using is Marty Spalding. It's PCI, yeah, PCI. And
Same on the career center.
okay, I didn't really. Yeah, I guess I did know that that's who you're using. Have you been happy with it? Yeah. No, we've been using him through the development process as well, and he's very knowledgeable and has been vital at some point. So.
Make a motion?
Yes, make a motion.
I make the motion to approve the MUHS cafeteria kitchen renovation project at the guaranteed maximum price construction cost of $2,038,599 and authorize Bread Loaf to move forward with the project.
Second. Okay, which one came first? Did you get Suzanne? Okay. Okay, any other questions? If not, are we ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion to approve the MUHS cafeteria kitchen renovation project at the guaranteed maximum price construction cost of $2,038,599 and authorize Breadloaf to move forward with the project, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstain? And the ayes have it. Congratulations for on our way. Thank you. Okay, so working down, there's nothing else. Under other.
I have something.
Yeah. So can I put that under other? Yeah. Okay. Since it wasn't on the agenda per se as an item, but I will definitely. I was going to go to other right now and ask if there's some other.
Yeah.
Items. So I'm going to.
I have another.
Good. I thought you might. I hope.
Yeah. I just want to update the board on the superintendent search process. The position was posted on Friday the 3rd and will be open until the 28th. It's posted on School Spring, Mac and Jake's website, Top School Jobs, and the Superintendent's Association website. Dr. Retto also has forwarded the posting to several of his contacts, professional contacts. So we are kind of at the next step where we need to, as a board, choose our interview questions and kind of map out what that's going to look like. So Dr. Grotto sent me some suggested interview questions based on our criteria. I will be forwarding that to all of you. And what he is going to want you all to do is take a look at them and probably choose like your top 3, or if you have other interview questions that you really prefer to have on there. We will need to come together to whittle that down, and we have to decide as a board whether we want him to be involved in that or whether we want to have like a special meeting and just do that ourselves. We need to have this done by or before April 11th because that's when we will be coming together as a board to review the sort of pre-screened candidates.
Do we want to just try to identify a date now?
I mean, I think that it would be helpful to, just keep us on task to have a date that we need to either, everybody submits their top 3, and then when we meet with Dr. Grotto on the 11th, he can kind of help us whittle down from there.
Right.
So, what do y'all think? And actually, I should, just for new board members, the last time we met to discuss this process and go over the timeline that we have set is that we will be meeting with Dr. Grotto on Tuesday, April 11th. Please put that on your calendar. That's a really important date. Where we'll be going over kind of the pre-screened candidates and identifying the ones that we would like to interview. Then the first round of interviews we have slated for April 18th, 19th, and 20th.
Mary Heather, would it be possible that we draft up kind of just an email?
Absolutely. I'm happy
that
to
way,
do that.
Yeah, we can just shoot that out.
But I'm also wanting to put this on the record for the public. And then that our finalist interviews will, I think he said, I think we did May 2nd and 4th because I believe the 3rd is an early release date. Is that, I think that's correct.
Yep.
I think you brought that up, Nancy.
Yep.
So just put that on your calendars. I will send an email that, writes up the timeline for everyone and also forward the interview questions. When we discuss the interview questions, I think that needs to be conducted in executive session. So that it's just part of the personnel process.
May I make a recommendation that we do that on the 27th?
Which is our next board.
Our next
board meeting.
Use that meeting for that reason.
Just add executive session.
We'll add executive session to do that.
Then we don't have to make a special,
Okay. And at this point, I'm not sure what the agenda will need to be, so we can keep that in mind. So hopefully, we can hold off some things if we need to. so
Yeah, I
we
mean,
can get that done.
this is really important for us
Exactly.
to move forward, so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So all of you guys have been so patiently standing.
I haven't been that patient.
Oh, I know. What did, yeah, hit me over
I
the
think
head.
the Ripon students were more patient.
Okay, okay. You guys should, thank you for being here, and please, go Godspeed. You have that slide back there. Please, let me
Clarify the question, Monday the 27th, we're suggesting doing the superintendent search. Will that be our first meeting at 6:30?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll do that within the time between 6:30 and 9?
Yes.
Okay.
And we need to set the agenda, so we'll maybe together, Peter, identify the agenda to make sure we can fit it all in.
So
Yes.
keep the 27th as your due date for having gone through the interview questions, selecting your top three, or coming up with your own.
The 27th.
Oh, okay.
Which is our next board meeting.
We'll come together and
Yeah.
My question was about the times for those dates. Can you make sure the email includes those for like the 11th and the other?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
My other is just, we have a lot of new board members. I'm wondering if people are curious about the committee assignments, if perhaps we could just
We'll talk about that.
have a really quick snippet of what the timeline will be for our committee assignments.
Yeah, and so I know it's like 8 o'clock. I'm looking up there, it says 7, but that's not correct. So had our meeting not gone so long, I wanted to spend a little bit more time about what are the committees. Because what I would love you to do is give preferences to like the committee or, one or two choices that you would really like to serve on. But at this point, you need information. So I'm trying to think how best to do that.
Could be
So-
part of the orientation.
Yeah, we can certainly cover that over the next.
Yeah.
There's also info on the website that describes it.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely make use of the website, and I can send an email out just giving you some links of things to check out, okay? Because it is getting late.
And then what do you want us to do with that information? You said
You
come up
will-
with a couple
Yeah.
committees that interest us, and then what do we
And
do?
then what'll happen is I'll select based on your preferences and try to be as fair as possible, the membership for the committees.
The selection process for committees has normally been the executive committee shares, who wants what, and then tries to even out the committees with members that have experience on the committee versus new members.
Yep.
So it's typically a group decision.
Is there an expectation for the number of committees that a board member participates on?
This year, Victoria, she basically, for most people, they only served on one committee, right? There was a few of us, I know Chip, myself, we served on more than one committee, Mary, Heather served on more than one committee, especially your first year. I mean, it's got to be reasonable, for sure. So I will definitely, I think that's a good idea. Yes.
I would also, some of the committees are more time intensive, some are less time intensive. Example being, we're going to be going into negotiations with this firm from, for the next year. That's going to be a significant amount of work. So that committee probably won't have people doing two different committees because it's going to be so time intensive. Some other committees meet once a month potentially. Finance committee is heavy during budget season, but not really outside of budget season. So I think there's, depending on what your availability is in terms of, I think that would be a helpful thing for you to collect is like what kind of time commitment potentially people are looking at too. And we can talk about that this week when we meet and go over every committee and kind of we think the time commitment might be.
Yep, and then, of course, we have the superintendent search, which is taking up more time, so we have to really keep that in mind as well, you know, as far as what we may be able to accomplish in that phase. And balance it.
And conceivably, the 4 committees, there's policy, budget, facilities, community engagement,
And negotiation.
negotiation is 5. But of the 4 standing committees, you can figure you have a board of 13, the chair doesn't necessarily have to sit on a committee. You can envision that you could just easily have one person serve on one committee. That being said, I will say that the Career Center for the last 2 years ran 3 members short. So the chair filled all the committees up on her schedule just because we didn't have enough members. That is meant here, but you do what you need to do.
And we have a 13-member board, and we're all here, so that's good. Okay, any other, so we'll definitely, you know, and not spend more time tonight, but give you what you need so that you can make your choices. Okay? Does anyone have any other?
When would you like the choices, like when would you like the preferences to be? Before next meeting?
Yeah, it'll be before next meeting. I'm thinking, when I was, tonight I was thinking that there would be an email that comes out to everybody and give people instructions, that kind of thing, and resources for folks, because the time is getting late, so we have it here, but I thought it's better of it. Okay, folks can go home. Anything else tonight?
Do we have a need for an executive session? If not, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I don't think so.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor? Yay. Okay, thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.